Coming up on Expedition Files.
150 British settlers set up a colony in the New World and then seemed to disappear forever. Or did they? We may finally know the true story of the Roanoke colony and a biblical tale of two cities wiped off the face of the earth. New evidence suggests we may have uncovered the true fate of Sodom and Gomorrah. And 5,000 years ago, an enormous monument was mysteriously constructed. But now, science may finally reveal the truth behind the secrets of Stonehenge. In the corridors of time are mysteries that defy explanation. Now, I'm traveling through history itself on a search for the truth. New evidence. Shocking answers. I'm Džoš Gejts, and these are my Expedition Files.
Where we're from shapes who we are, but there are some places that shape us even though we've never visited them. Places so strange, so curious, that they loom large in our imaginations. Tonight, we examine the files of 3 of the most mysterious places on the planet, places we all know, but paradoxically, none of us understand. From a lost New World colony whose inhabitants vanished without a trace, an ancient biblical city that was said to be brutally wiped off the map by the hand of God, and a circle of mystical stones that has captivated humanity for millennia. A single question maps a path between them. What is the true story of these places? We begin here in 1587. To the European settlers who've dared to cross the Atlantic, the so-called New World appears to be an unexplored wilderness of limitless opportunity.
One of the very first groups of settlers has just arrived.
The good ship Lion, sailing from Plymouth, England with 115 souls on board, has dropped anchor at Roanoke Island off the coast of what today is North Carolina. Led by this man, explorer and artist John White, they are here to establish an English colony. Now, these are not seasoned soldiers, but families. In fact, John White is even bringing his own pregnant daughter, Eleanor, along on the adventure. But their hopes will soon disappear, and so will they. Within 3 years, every single one of them will vanish without a trace, as if they never existed.
These brave settlers risked everything to found our nation, but today their fate remains tragically unknown. For hundreds of years, the myth of the Roanoke colony has perplexed historians. Were they wiped out by the elements, killed by indigenous tribes? Did they relocate to somewhere uncharted? If you ask residents of Roanoke today, they'll tell you the colony was simply lost to time, but history might have gotten this story wrong, as new evidence finally reveals a 450-year-old secret. John White first set foot in the New World 2 years before he arrived with his daughter. In 1585, he was sent with a battalion of soldiers to map the area. He quickly bonded with the local Croatoans, who helped him navigate this extremely foreign land. They built a settlement, but within a year's time, relations with another indigenous tribe turned violent. Most of the men, including John White, returned to Europe, but to preserve an English presence, 15 men are ordered to remain. But now, 2 years later, White is back with a vengeance. returning on the orders of Queen Elizabeth I with 115 men, women, and children to establish England's first permanent colony as its governor. But when they arrive, they are greeted by an unsettling scene. Of the 15 men that had been left behind, they find bones of only one settler, and no sign of the rest, perhaps a dark omen of things to come. Still, the settlers begin the hard work of making the New World their new home. Within weeks, John White's daughter Eleanor gives birth to the very first English child born in North America. Her name? Virginia. But realizing they don't have enough provisions to face the coming hardships of winter, John White makes the difficult decision to leave his friends and family behind and return to England to resupply. He is slightly comforted knowing that he has left behind his trusty guide from the Croatoan tribe, a native named Manteo, who he hopes will help the settlers survive.
He doesn't know it, but this is the last time he will see his daughter Eleanor, his granddaughter Virginia, or indeed any of the other settlers ever again.
On his departure, he instructs them that if they come into trouble, to carve on the trees, post, or doors a cross and the name of the place where they'll be. When John gets back to England, his plans fall apart. He's prevented from heading back to the New World because of the Anglo-Spanish War, and what should have been a 3-month trip turns into an excruciating 3 years before he can return to his family and friends. Finally, in August of 1590, White sets foot on the shores of North America for the 3rd time.
Yet as he and his crew arrive on Roanoke, White is shocked to find no signs of life. But mysteriously, there are no signs of death either. In his desperate search for survivors, he finds no bodies, no evidence of struggle.
When they search the settlement, the mystery deepens.
The colony is completely abandoned. All the structures have been dismantled. But he does locate one critical clue. There on a post is a single word: Croatoan.
White is filled with a sudden sense of relief. He knows what that means. The settlers must have abandoned their post to travel to the island of Croatoan, 50 miles south. Encouraged, White and his crew sail to Croatoan, excited to reconnect with the settlers. But Mother Nature has other plans.
Our victuals scarce, and our cask and fresh water lost.
Hammered by weather and running desperately low on supplies, the ship's captain refuses to continue on to Croatoan and forces White to return to England without finding the settlers. Back in London, White desperately tries to raise funds to return to search for his daughter Eleanor, granddaughter Virginia, and the other settlers. But tragedy strikes. John White falls sick and dies. And with John's death, he may have sealed the fate of those he left behind. It isn't until 20 years later, in 1607, that a new group led by Captain John Smith heads to the so-called New World to create their own settlement, the Jamestown Colony. When they arrive, the search for Roanoke settlers resumes. John Smith questions local indigenous tribes, searching for answers.
And the tribes provide encouraging news. They speak of natives near Croatoan with blue eyes, wearing European-style clothing and speaking the local Algonquin language. But Smith has his own problems back at Jamestown. The new settlement is struggling to survive and doesn't have the resources to make the 150-mile journey to Croatoan. The Jamestown settlers are never able to confirm that these blue-eyed natives might actually be Roanoke survivors.
Lacking any solid evidence, the fate of the Roanoke settlers slips into the shadows. Despite all the sacrifices they made to found what would become America, it seems America has forgotten them. 1937, North Carolina. 50 miles inland from where the lost settlers landed at Roanoke Island 350 years ago. A hiker is walking near the Chowan River when they stumble on a stunning piece of evidence that could unlock the fate of the Roanoke settlers. It is a stone with a remarkable inscription, seemingly written by John White's daughter, Eleanor, and confirming the sad end of Virginia, the first baby born in the New World.
Virginia went hence unto heaven 1591.
Does this inscription confirm the tragic death of the first English baby born in the New World, John White's granddaughter, Virginia? And there's more. On the other side of the stone, Eleanor purportedly writes of the settlers' plight.
Father, soon after you left for England, we came here. Only misery and war for 2 years. More than half of us died these 2 years, mostly from sickness, being 24 in number.
More stones are uncovered as amateur archaeologists scour the woods of the Carolinas and northern Georgia. In all, 48 inscriptions are found. They come to be known as the Dare Stones, and they tell a riveting tale of the settlers' journey and resettlement 50 miles west of Roanoke. So, mystery solved, right? Well, not so fast. 4 years after the discovery of the Dare Stones, a journalist from the Saturday Evening Post takes a closer look. The journalist's conclusion is damning. The Dare Stones are not written by the settlers.
Rather, they are an elaborate hoax created by a master engraver.
Even the first stone, supposedly written by his daughter, Eleanor Dare, turned out to be a fake. But if the settlers didn't head west as the Dare Stones suggest, then what happened to them? How do 115 souls vanish without a trace? Did they perish in the wilderness due to starvation or some hostile force? Or instead, did they head south, down the Carolina coast toward Hatteras Island, formerly known as Croatoan, as John White believed to his dying day? In 2016, I went to Hatteras Island myself and met with an archaeological team led by Scott Dawson, who has dedicated his life to searching for any sign of the lost settlers.
Do you think the Lost Colony folks came here? Are you convinced of that?
They literally wrote down they came here, they had
Right.
a relationship with this tribe. I mean, those things, the historical context can't be thrown out the window.
Historian Scott Dawson is about to show me one of the strongest pieces of evidence yet that the Lost Colony may have made a new home here with the Croatoan tribe.
What the hell is that?
This is the handle of a rapier, which is a sword.
Wow.
And the blade would have been coming this way.
Sure, yeah.
So the handle would have come here.
So this is definitely from the 1500s. This is from early colonial times.
Typologically, it's been dated using other samples to around 1580, 1590.
Wow, so this really is right in the money. This is Lost Colony time right here.
That's right. And the rapier is particularly good because a rapier is an extremely expensive gentleman's sword. And they even said in the sources they would not trade or part with their sword.
Wow, right. So if it's something that they wouldn't have traded that was this valuable and this precious, possibly was actually brought here by its owner.
Right. It's reasonable.
That is extraordinary.
The rapier handle isn't the only significant colonial relic found at this site. They found an Elizabethan gun barrel and even Nuremberg tokens, like the ones found at the original Roanoke site.
Until we find that one magical object that seals the deal, you'll continue to dig.
Oh, yeah.
8 years have passed since I was last on Hatteras Island, and in that time, Scott and his team have continued to excavate the site, and what they've been finding is remarkable.
We're We're literally finding artifacts from the colony, and we're finding them in the Croatoan village. With the longhouse post holes, the Croatoan themselves are buried there, the nails, the bricks. There's hundreds of thousands of pieces of Croatoan pottery, and even the guns and swords and weapons, pipes and tools and arrows and all that stuff. And we find all of that. It's all together. The colonists and the Croatoan, they're living together. When we find Croatoan houses, the longhouses, pretty much the same across the state. They're kind of shaped like a big oval, and with flat sides and rounded at the end, and they're well known throughout North Carolina and Virginia what they look like. We find them all the time. We've got over 700 post holes or something like that. And we actually found English houses right next to them, sometimes overlapping. When the English built houses on Roanoke, they used square beams held together with wooden pegs. And then the walls were just called wattle and daub, where you have a bunch of branches that are just kind of strung together, and they've got a lot of holes in it. And they smear this plaster all over it called daub that's made out of sand and clay. And when we're digging, you'll see it going in a line and then cut at a right angle, and it comes over here, and then you find a bunch of bricks and stones where the fireplace was. All of that is there. I mean, we've found their houses, we found their stuff, we found everything but a colonist. And we might have found a colonist, because we do find skeletons sometimes. We've never done DNA on them or anything because out of respect. But I will say that in some of those burials, there's English stuff. Musket balls, horse bridle, just kind of tossed in. And we probably have found descendants of the colony, if not colonists themselves. We'll never know because we don't care to test the bones. I feel like we've got enough evidence anyway. We said before we even started, the greatest thing we could possibly find is a Tudor rose. It's such a tiny window in time. It's specifically Queen Elizabeth's court. And we found it at the end of 2021. So the proof is indisputable. They're living together.